There's no light though. Go see no, there's no light at all. Like
according to reports, right, the United Nations says that it's expected that we see a 30% drop in productivity level in such regions.
whenever there is power supply, there is productivity, and you see a lot of small, these SMEs, small business thriving.
You're not sure if you're going to get reliable power. And even in the case now, for some people, you're not sure if you can afford that reliable power.
For education now, for example, those that live in regions where there are no lights, right, what happens is that they have limited time to read.
Nigeria is the first country in Africa that launched its energy transition plan in 2022.
I'm proud of my country.
But the fact that we don't have lights is an opportunity for us, actually, because there's a lot of gaps we can fill. So why not fill it rightly? Like, why not invest in clean energy sources to fill in that gap?
Hey guys, you're welcome. My name is Paul, and with me here is
Joan, easy.
and also we have a senior consultant from energy markets and rate consultancy. Hi, how are you doing today?
I'm fine, thank you.
Hi, I see. You look so beautiful.
Thank you. You
Welcome.
too.
Thank you so much icing on it.
Icing on the
Thank
cake.
you. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, same here. Welcome.
Well, before we go to today's discussion, I want to know, like, while growing up, in the place you grew up, did you always have lights? Was there always power supply there?
Well, funny enough, when I remember growing up, I think I remember more lights. I don't know where it was coming from. As a child, that was none of my business.
Exactly.
But
No one was just to sit down in front of the TV and watch.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, what about you?
There's no light though. Go see no, there's no light at all. Like there was even a time we didn't even see light for like almost how many years? Okay, let me don't
Serious?
exaggerate.
Well,
Calm down.
Actually, mine was more of a mix, actually, like little from here, little from there.
Yeah.
So I grew up in a place where there was light all the
Okay,
time.
wait, let me don't lie.
then-
There was light though. But I didn't
Yeah,
really
you
feel
should-
it.
So yeah, there was a time where I was in a place where there was always light, right? And then we had to move out from there and then went to our own place. And then it was a new environment and there was no light. When I mean no light, like
Chai.
zero. Like we had no hopes. The only time when we see lights there was maybe on very special days like Christmas.
Wow.
Like, and I'm serious, like it was always like, and you see
So
like,
like people see
oh
road
wow,
and eat the chicken
there's
everywhere.
lights. Like it's always very shocking to us. Like there's lights. Like, and then this got all better now, and then the light there is actually very good, even better than where we're coming from actually.
Yeah.
But that's actually what we face here in Africa. And that's why today we'll be talking about electricity access here in Africa. According to International Energy Agency, they say that over 600 million people are currently living in the dark in Africa. This is a very large population, I must say. In 2022, 20 countries were found to be with the numbers, to have very high numbers of people without light in the world. Out of these 20 countries, 18 are in Africa, while 17 are among the least developing countries. However, the World Bank continues to emphasize that if we are to achieve giving these people access to light by 2030, we have to connect at least 90 million people per year to the power grid wherever they might be.
Yeah, that's very, very wonderful, Paul. Thank you so much for that wonderful background. In fact, the one that even struck me was the fact that a lot of people don't have lights. Like they're still living in the dark in Africa.
But interestingly, like just by the side that in 2022, when that report came out, right, Nigeria was number one, top in the chart.
It is well with all of us. But anyways, let's talk about how it has really like impacted in the society as by in Africa. And one of these particular impacts is the economic angle of it. You see a lot of businesses thriving. Whenever there is power supply, there is productivity, and you see a lot of these SMEs, small business thriving because you have to produce. The manufacturing companies have to, keep producing, and a lot of things will just be thriving because there is reliable power supply. So that's one angle of it. And also in the education system, it's also making sense, because by the time there is power supply, you can access a lot of things, like for instance the internet, which I know that sometimes there's a way that they will connect the internet and electricity together, that when there's electricity you can actually work hand in hand with the both of them. And also all these technology gadgets, when there is power supply you can actually have access to them. So
like, I mean, for education now, for example, those that live in regions where there are no lights, right? What happens is that they have limited time to read. So it's more like, I know that I have to read before it goes dark, because once it's dark now, I don't have light to read. But those on the flip side, right, they have about 4 to 6 hours additional time to read, right?
Yeah.
And then talking about, is one thing about lights is, and I find very interesting, is the fact that even as a person, I mean, I don't produce anything, right, or do anything, but I'm at home and then there's no light.
That feeling alone.
Sometimes I'll just be on the bed, like, what will I even do today? Like, it's not that
it'll just kill your vibe.
You get, I might have, sometimes I have things planned already, that okay, tomorrow I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and then the light comes, and then tomorrow comes, right, and then there's no light, and I'm just on the bed, like, waiting for light. Not that I want to use the light for anything per se, but just that I'm just waiting for the light. Yeah. According to reports, right, the United Nations says that with light, right, with regions without light, it's expected that we see a 30% drop in their productivity level in such regions. And that's because, just like I've said now, you lack motivation to work, right? And then in places where they even have probably alternative means, right, to work, right? What happens in such places now is that they have to spend more money to produce and things like that.
So I see. What do you think about it too?
So yeah, just jumping into what he said first, to kind of put context to how bad our electricity access deficit is in this part of the world. You mentioned about 600 million people today do not have access to electricity, and that 600 million represents 75% of the global population, basically. And Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, has a huge portion of that percentage, because the average for electricity access in sub-Saharan Africa is about 43%, and the rest of the world, they have an average of 87%. So you can see the gap in productivity, in education, how that affects health systems, cooking, and everything we do daily. So like when you see how wide this gap is, you tend to understand just how much more we are not doing for the mere fact that we do not have access to electricity. Because like you mentioned, education, you said you have to read, you have to plan your life and say, I have to read before the day gets dark because I'm not sure if I'm going to get light. You're not sure if you're going to get reliable power. And even in the case now, for some people, you're not sure if you can afford that reliable power. I'm subbing band A, the entire band A system. So you get to see just how far it affects our development. And if you do say, okay, you know what, let me explore alternative energy sources. I think a report came out that estimated that Nigerians spend 5 trillion naira annually on alternative energy sources, like our diesel and petrol generators. We spend 5 trillion naira annually. So imagine if we had reliable, affordable power, and 5 trillion naira goes into the economy. You can think of all the things we can do: better health systems, better roads, better educational frameworks, and all how that would trickle down.
Also in the agricultural sector, that's even one of another line that we should really look into. And with the presence of reliable power supply, it will help these farmers or these producers to store their products, because there's something we call post-harvest losses. So when these products are not being refrigerated, like saved very well, we tend to have more losses. You see that you have a very wild field and you've planted a lot of things, but at the end of the day you have little to show for it. So with the presence of power supply, it has actually helped the agricultural sector to preserve most of these agricultural products and all that.
I want to just mention briefly on the health sector, because you mentioned earlier, just breezed by it, and it's according to WHO, they say that over $10,000 is being used to generate power in regions without lights in the hospitals. And this money now can be used to probably hire more staffs and things like that, provide more better healthcare facilities for the patient and things like that.
Yeah.
All of these things, right? If we should just, we're going back and forth, right? But if we should look at it in the real sense, if there was light, right,
Yeah.
constant, so not just the lights coming and going, right? If it was constant, very reliable, right, we'll say that number one, we won't be saving more money because imagine the $10,000 for instance now that is meant to go into probably purchase of PMS or purchase of diesel. All of these things will be pumped into something else, hiring more staffs. You don't have situations where you say, oh, we don't have enough nurses on ground, we don't have enough doctors on ground. Like all of these kind of issues won't be popping up.
Like that too. I want to share a little story. I was having a conversation with a barrister like few days back, and he was just telling me that that most of these health centers are really trying. And I was like, because I was trying to tell him the bad experience I had there when I got there at night. One of my family member like that was not really well, so we left the house around 1 a.m. and we got there. Normally hospital is supposed to be there to receive you at any time. So we got there, and it's a health center, and everywhere was dark. There was nobody, there was no light, nothing. And this was me screaming, screaming for help and all that. So I was sharing my experience with this barrister guy, and he was saying, but Joan, like, come to think of it, they are really, really trying. Like, it's just that they are not really being taken good care of. That was how his wife gave birth there in the night, but they used torchlight.
Can you imagine?
Exactly.
And that was where I just looked at him. I said, sorry, you said what? They use torchlights and you're busy praising them. He was like, yes, he's praising them because the midwife and the matrons there, they are actually professionals. But the only thing is that they lack basic facilities to help the health sector grow. So this brings me to, this is what we're talking about. There is no power supply. And imagine you're conducting an operation in a hospital and there is no light. You're using torchlight. And I'm very sure it's a pregnant woman's torchlight they were using. So I don't know. It's funny, but it's not funny at the same time, actually.
But now, it's no doubt that efforts are already being made to bring to reduce these numbers, because I know of countries like Ghana, Rwanda, who are currently on track to getting access to getting the access to light to everyone in those regions. But another interesting thing is that just 20% of countries in Africa are actually on track to hit that mark by 2030. And I mean, 2030 is just like 5 years from now.
5 years from
exactly.
now.
So we need to do better, I must say. There are already efforts around. So from your end, what effort do you see you are seeing around now in Africa?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of them. So there's the African Development Bank's Mission 300, which aims to connect 300 million people in Africa to electricity by 2030. So that also contributes to the 2030 target that countries have. Then bringing it home, the Nigerian government is even making efforts through the Rural Electrification Agency under their Nigerian Electrification Project launch. Yes, so the project has different components that are focused on different aspects. So one of them is the Energizing Education Program. So the EEP basically wants to provide reliable power, renewable power to 37 federal universities and I think about 7 teaching hospitals in Nigeria, and they're doing amazingly well. So and it's good because these projects are in collaboration with development organizations like the World Bank and the AFDB. So we are really doing a lot on our end. Even Nigeria is the first country in Africa that launched its energy transition plan in 2022.
I'm proud of my country.
I feel like it's after they saw that numbers that they're like, we need to do something really. Okay, but we'll hold our thoughts now. We'll go on a break, and once we come back, we'll pick up from where we jump. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Hey everyone, let's face it, our world today experiences numerous challenges. And guess what? Our community isn't off the hook either. Most of the world issues are either not talked about enough or never talked about at all. But here on Timeline, we've got you covered. we dive deep into issues that affect us every day, leaving behind footprints of wisdom, knowledge, and solutions. Think of it like a roadmap that keeps you on the track for success. So buckle up, because in this new season of Timeline, we're taking another trip through the past, the present, and navigate into a more promising future. Again, we're talking solutions, people, and let's make one thing clear. This is not your average blah 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 convo. This is real talk with a side of inspiration and a sprinkle of wow. I never thought about it like that. I'm your host on this impactful ride. Together, we'll tackle the tough stuff, laugh a little, and find ourselves on the path to positive change. So what are you waiting for? Season 2 of Timeline will be loaded. Let's get started. Hop in and let's drive straight into the heart of issues shaping our world. Let's go. Oh, one more thing. Hit that subscribe button and let's take this ride together.
Every day, amazing stories of hope and tenacity unfold across the globe. On Hued Hour, we dive into these inspiring tales and discuss the vital work being done in the humanitarian and development space. Humanity has never faced a shortage of challenges, yet we rise stronger through teamwork and determination. Though these remedies are often underreported, on Hued Hour, we advocate sustainable solutions. We bring you the latest and most impactful news on how lives are being changed. We engage with young change makers and experts who provide valuable insights into relief efforts and the challenges faced by local communities through a global perspective. Join us every Wednesday by 8 a.m. on Hued Network's YouTube channel as we embark on this journey of positive change.
Yeah, welcome back. We're still on Timeline. We're discussing how we can actually bring access to electricity to everyone in Africa. I mean, it's time that we light up the world. I like that.
In your mind, though. You are giving quotes.
It's time we light up the world. Like, it's not easy to live in the dark, I must say. I've tried it once and it's not nice.
You've tried it once.
Yeah, when I moved to a region where there was no light.
Sorry, like what came to my head? You were once blind. Like that was what came to my mind. I'm so sorry. Don't mind me.
It's actually interesting that we all are wearing glasses here today.
Means we're brilliant. That's a stereotype I'm sticking with.
Oh. Please, if you are not wearing glasses, it's fine. You are so brilliant. Please.
Don't be oppressed.
B.
Okay, so we have so we're talking about African Development Bank, and one of the things I saw as regards their efforts to try to ensure that everyone has power supply, right, is the Connect 130, is the new energy deal for Africa. What that aims at is connecting 130 million people. And what interests me there is that out of this, right, 75 out of this is going to be off-grid, and then the remaining are going to be on-grid. I want you to break it down, because for me, on-grid and off-grid, I'm like, what does this mean really?
Okay, so basically, when you say people are getting on-grid electricity, it means there's a central grid and they get power from there. So Nigeria has that structure, where we get live from our distributors. So we have our GENCOs, generating companies, Transmission Company of Nigeria, the TCN, and then we have the DISCOs, distribution companies. So we have ADC covers, I think, 4 states, BDC, IBDC. IKDC, so the people that get their light from, say, ADC are connected to the grid. They are on grid. That's on grid electricity. So off grid electricity is for people that, because of the reliability issues that we face on the grid, a lot of people, they explore other energy sources like fuel and diesel generators. So those are off-grid, but off-grid also covers fuel, diesel generators, solar systems, wind power, hydropower, biomass, and all of that. So as long as you get your power from a source that is not central from the grid, you're sort of off grid.
Okay, so just for more like that, because from what I understand now, about 43% of people around the world, about 43 million people, right, are already moving to solar system, right? And I mean, for me, for example, right, when we moved to a place where there was no lights, one of the things that my dad invested in, because I mean, after spending so much money on fuel, spending so much money on diesel, at the point, one year I just went back. I went to school and I came back, and then everywhere was lit up. I was like, oh wow, there's lights. Like, oh, it's solar. And then he invested so much in it, right? So my point is that we now that we are probably on solar now, does that mean that we are off the grid or we're still on grid?
Okay, so you're partially off grid. Okay. So completely off grid would be in a case where you don't depend on the grid for electricity. So your solar system
is what is totally giving you electricity.
Takes care of all your electricity needs.
Okay.
So at no point do you feel the need to go charge or switch it up because you have enough batteries, enough solar panels to cover everything you need to do. So yeah, there are people like that actually.
That's right.
And just to add, Nigeria has like an off-grid renewable energy potential for solar mini grids and solar home systems of about $9.2 billion. So you can imagine how much we can do with that sort of potential and how much reliable power people will get from that investment.
Well, Kenya is you've talked about different countries in Africa, and Kenya is not actually lagging behind. They've actually connected people, especially the low-income households. And there was one interesting thing they did. They subsidized the rates so that everybody can actually have access. Because one thing is for you to have access to electricity, and another thing is for you to sustain it. And also, before you can even have access to it, do you have the funds? I think there's a music. There's a music called funds. So do you have the funds to
manage on
so that's what Kenya did, and I consider that as a very, very huge step to make sure that everybody, not just the urban areas but the rural areas, and not just only the rural areas, the low income families can actually have access to.
And I think it's even more important for the rural areas, because in most cases where you get situations where people want to develop projects for off-grid projects, it's to reach we call them unserved or underserved areas, because these places are usually too far for grid connection. So it will be more expensive to get transformers and cables
So I think that's why they have the micro grids and the mini grids, so that they can just install it in these particular areas and then connect it as well.
Like, with all of this now, right, we still face barriers, because I mean, if it was as easy as you are saying it, right, everywhere will be lit up, right? There will be light everywhere, right? So what are these barriers? I think she mentioned one some way right now, where she mentioned how people can they really afford it, even if you bring it to their doorstep. Can they really afford it? Can they pay for it and things like that? And I think that's one thing. And also you mentioned that doing all of these things in the real sense, connecting places that are reserved or underserved, right, are very expensive, because I mean you need to spend a lot of money on poles, on cables and things like that. So it's more like saying that instead of me spending money right, I'd rather invest this money in other things.
So lack of infrastructure.
Exactly. So there's lack of infrastructure. There's also lack of funds for
I think we should literally like lay more emphasis on this cost aspect of it, because imagine you want to buy, just like your dad now, we have to ask him how much did he buy those solar panels.
Back then it was very it was on the high side, it was like
compared to now it was cheap, like compared to now
it was cheap, but then
so imagine now somebody like me now, do I have money? I have, but other people don't call, and how will they purchase all these things? In fact, buying a solar panel is like marrying somebody, and then somebody from maybe from the eastern part of Nigeria. I don't want to call my state, please. But anyways, it's very, very expensive. That's what I'm trying to say. And people do not have that particular money or amount of money to purchase this thing. That's why it's still serving as a barrier for people to have access to power supply. So,
and just to add to that, I mean, imagine you're in a community where probably your 7-year-old child has never seen light their entire lives because you guys are not connected to the grid. And some funny looking people come and they're like, oh, we have a mini grid we want to install for you. And this is how much you are paying me. And I'm struggling. I'm a farmer struggling to
and we've
farm.
been dwelling in darkness for a very long time. So
it's
sort
of, so it's sort of like, oh, I'm fine. That's not my scale of preference. I have to feed my children. I have to buy things. I have to invest in my farm. So there needs to be there in developing this project. That's why it's important to have that sort of balance that promotes acceptability among communities, especially these rural areas.
Yeah, you mentioned briefly about we moving to renewable energy, right?
Yeah.
And I think 67% of we in Africa, most of our energy comes from non-renewable energy. Most of them are fossil fuels that actually affect our environment. My question here is that are we at the point now where we are now moving from renewable? And in fact, is this our grid that we're even using? Is it even something that I hope it doesn't have any impact on the environment? And then how can we move from what we have now to having more renewable energies and things like that?
Okay, so to answer your to answer the last point, Nigeria's grid, I think 80% comes from thermal plants, then 20% is hydro. Okay, so you asked if we're at the point where we move to renewable. So for Nigeria, I think we have a really peculiar case because we have here, our problem is we don't even have lights. So on one hand, we're like, we don't have lights. We just want lights. A lot of people don't care where the light comes from. I mean, for developed countries, a lot of them have electricity access, so they can properly plan out how they want to transition and say, oh, okay, let's turn off that fossil plant and turn it to a hydro plant or something. But here, the one we have is not even enough for us. So we first of all, on one hand, we just want light. We don't care. A lot of people don't care where it's from. But the fact that we don't have light is an opportunity for us, actually, because there's a lot of gaps we can fill. So why not fill it rightly? Like, why not invest in clean energy sources to fill in that gap? And I know a lot of people kind of are on the fence on this one, like, why are we focusing on clean energy sources? We don't even contribute, because the entire continent of Africa contributes just about 4% to global emissions. That's the lowest globally. But we get affected the most because the other big countries that are contributing the most, they have the funds, they have the socioeconomic structures to deal with it, to adapt to it, to build projects that would help them cope. We have a lot of issues on this part of the world in the global south. Like, we have security issues, we have health issues, we have education.
Like, almost everything's on the list, actually.
Exactly.
Food insecurity.
Do you get even this energy too? We don't even have. So that shows us that we don't contribute to what is causing the problem as much as other people, but we get to bear the brunt the most, because when it happens, we don't have the capacity to actually help ourselves. So why not invest in something that would help us going forward? So while we want light and we have the gap, electricity access gap, why not fill that gap with something that is right, like with renewable energy sources?
Like another angle that can actually be a barrier is climate change, like especially in countries where we have earthquake and hurricanes, tsunami and all that. So it can actually destroy infrastructure services, and you see, before you know it, the next thing we hear is some people's national grid has fallen down. But anyways,
but I think, to be fair, Nigeria is, God looked at us and said, oh, you guys can't like, you guys deal with what you guys have. You guys shouldn't have to deal with all of that, because
not share the problem for everybody. But anyways, we also have market and demand challenges. So low consumption levels, sparse population density, and limited demand in rural areas reduce project profitability. That's another angle as well.
You said that we are far behind, right? we are not there yet.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't be talking about renewable, but we can actually invest in that just so that we grow from there. So what are the strategies now that we can use to improve the access of electricity in Africa?
Okay, so sorry, I just want to say something about what she said about the sparse, how that is a challenge, because like you said, sparse population density, because you can go like travel miles and miles, and it's just like one community of about 50 people.
Like, I mean, the place we moved to, right, there was nobody to our left, there was nobody to our right, there was nobody in front of us.
Yeah.
So it was just like we, and then bush. And then the next was like you have to travel basically before you see another person.
So that's a problem, because imagine putting a system there to give them electricity, and this system, because these systems usually have their capacities, so, and the system can serve everybody. And remember, there's a rural area, they mostly have bulbs, basically. They won't have refrigerators the way urban areas have. So there's basically not enough people or appliances to utilize this power, but you need to electrify it, like you need to electrify them. And so how do you go about that? Because people wouldn't want to pay a lot of money for something that they are using to just turn on their bulbs. So that's where we come into how we create systems, sustainability systems for projects. We look at, there's this thing called productive use of energy now that is being incorporated into projects in renewable energy. So it's like if you're a developer and you want to go put a mini grid somewhere, your project has to have a sustainability plan. So it has to include, say, productive use equipment. Say you look at the community, maybe they are fishermen. So you have to include an energy efficient freezer that they can use to preserve their fish, and then sell it, so that they have a sense of adequacy. The project is working for them. It's being useful.
So they see the need of the project actually.
It's boosting their productivity. For farmers, you can do millers or rice producing communities. You can. So sustainability is one aspect. Then also the financing models, like you mentioned, are for affordability, because when you're looking at financing, we look at it from the top and the bottom, from the developers and the customers. Because first of all, developers also need money to go and build that project. And then the customers need money to pay for the service you're providing. So that's where grants come in a lot of times from development agencies, and they give developers grants. And then these developers then integrate models that would help customers pay. We have the pay as you go, we have energy as a service, we have now there's this new one coming up, COBO model, community-based ownership model, where you try to make the community own the project. So they pay a certain amount of money. After a couple or a few years, they get to own it. So it builds, this is our property, we have to protect it. Because another challenge is vandalism. You build a project, and next month they've gone to take,
or even while building it, say, you just see it come the next day and something is out
of there. So if you make the community own it and say, this thing we are building is for you, everybody wants to protect their property.
Exactly.
So if they say, this thing is for us, so even if one of them is stealing, or the person they will go and they will catch that person and like, why are you trying to hinder hinder progress? So these are all like models that are being explored to try and improve electricity. And there's also aggregation for sparse populations. So if you have a mini grid here that's sufficiently serving you as a community, of course you have extra power you can give back to the grid. That's net metering. Then you have virtual power plants where there's an aggregator that says, okay, this one has a lot of power, this one has a lot of power, so let's aggregate it
together to form
and
one.
Send some sort of virtual plant that sells power back to the grid. So these are lots. There are lots of innovations that are coming in, and it just makes the space exciting.
So I feel that that pay as you go, I really like that point so much because what it really means is you can actually like pay in installments before like the product becomes yours,
Yes.
like, finally. And most people actually imbibe in this kind of culture, and I feel let me just say kudos to those companies that make it possible, because some of them will be like, no, you have to pay in full before you can buy or carry any of our products. But they've given some of these companies have given people the opportunity to pay in installments before the property becomes yours. So I think that's one angle too.
I think we've said enough on this whole thing, and we really hope that by 2030 there is light everywhere. Because I really must say, for me, right, even if I don't need the lights for anything per se, I just want to see it. Like, oh, that's good. Sometimes like I'll just be in my room and then I say, oh, there's light. Oh, that's nice.
Let me even just tell you something. Like, especially I talked about SMEs.
Yeah.
For instance, welding, tailoring. There's this little clip I watched on Instagram, and they were just there, like it's a tailor shop, and everybody was just sitting down like that. So immediately we heard that sound.
That's
everybody was like, they just wore their tape, the whole happiness because they brought light. So this is what he's trying to say, that when there is light, first of all, apart from there is hope, but
there is zeal to do work.
There is zeal to do work, and tailoring actually works with light, because most of us, I'm a fashion designer actually, most of us actually like to iron. Like when you're sewing, you're ironing, you're sewing at the same time. It makes your work smoother, it makes it neater. And also in the welding part, even though I don't know how welding works, but I know it works with light. To join two metals together cheaper, and all that, it's cheaper. So it's very, very important. Like it makes the society happy when there's light. And children, if you send them message when there's light, they will go sharp and come back. So
that's actually a very good point. And I think that's what we'll be able to take, because we've actually spent so much time. I must say, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you guys for having me.
I see you.
We'll see you, and I'm very sure that you'll see us as well. It's been a lovely episode, and we've done justice to this topic, I must say. And we hope that by 2030, there's going to be light everywhere. Power supply will be spread across Africa, and then we will no longer be in the dark.
Amen.
My name remains Paul, and with me here was
Joan. Easy.
And also we had the beautiful voice of
I see.
Bye for now.
Bye guys.
Bye guys.